Herzlich willkommen zu einer weiteren Folge von Pitwalk TV, dieses Mal direkt aus dem Fahrerlager des Hockenheim Rings, weil wir mitten in den Vorbereitungen stecken auf den Gruppe C Supercup, auf die zweite Auflage von diesem Comeback der spektakulären Sportwagen aus den goldenen 80er und 90er Jahren. Flankiert sehen wir zwei dieser C2-Modelle aus dem Hause Gebhardt Motorsport, zwei der Hauptdarsteller in dem Championat, das in diesem Jahr in der Tat ein solches ist, ausgedehnt nämlich von einer Einzelveranstaltung auf zwei Rennen, in Hockenheim Anfang Mai und in Assen im September. Die Gäste von mir, Norbert Okenga, heute sind William Hood von der Organisation des Gruppe C Supercup und Michael Lyons, der im Vorjahr mit seinem Boliden hier das Rennen, die Feuertaufe, gewonnen hat. Beide sind englischsprachig, also switchen wir wieder um auf Englisch, genauso wie wir es auch schon mit der Erstauflage des Gruppe C Talks von Pitwalk TV gemacht haben. And I'd like to start with you, William, because there are certain changes this year. I just mentioned it's not going to be a one-off event, the Super Cup, but it's extended into Assen in the Netherlands as well.
That's correct. That's correct. I mean, last year the event was such a success, etc., and we had so many teams and drivers that were just really pleased with the event that we decided this year to expand it so that we have two races. As you mentioned, we'll have the one race here in Hockenheim, and then another race in Assen in September. So we have the 6th and the 8th of May here at the Hockenheim Historic, and the 16th and 18th in Assen. And we're looking forward to both races.
Michael Lyons, I said you won last time round, first time round actually in Hockenheim. You just said it was a big success. For you, obviously, in particular, but how did you, looking back on the race, how did you like it?
Obviously, when you win, it's always a good day. But no, the organisation was really nice. What was really good is, in a new championship, sometimes organisers can be quite set with what their ambitions are, what their ideas, but here it was really friendly and really helpful. We were working out the regulations and all the teams were consulted, and anytime anything changed, it was as a group, and I think that's key because there's not so many guys with these beautiful old cars that we see around us, so keeping them on side and working together, it's the right way in my opinion.
I happen to know there was a survey done by the organisers in which all the teams were involved and asked like what should be improved, what ought to be changed. What were the changes you had in mind when you asked that?
It was obviously more races because we want to come and have more fun, but also during the weekend, but also in the formats to two events like William's been able to expand to with the calendar, because it's cool to come in Hockenheim, but obviously originally the cars race all over the world, so growing step by step is always good fun for us.
And Michael just mentioned there are changes to the race format as well. It's not going to be one set race with driver change, but...
Correct. I mean, as you mentioned, after the race we did a debrief. We sent out a questionnaire to all the teams and said, okay, what did you like? What can we improve on? You know, what would you like to see next year? And some of the response that we got influenced our decision to say, okay, we're going to change the times. We're going to increase it to two races on the weekend. So we're going to have two tests, one qualifying and then one race Saturday afternoon and another race Sunday afternoon, which will give the teams and the drivers more track time, and of course the audience more time to enjoy these beautiful cars.
But there is still going to be two drivers per car if the owner so chooses?
Correct. We have the possibility of saying either one driver, which will drive both races, or if we have two drivers, then we have to make sure that both drivers qualify in the 30-minute qualifying, and then one driver will drive on Saturday and the other driver will drive on Sunday.
So there is no pit stop anymore in the races?
That is correct. That's one of the major changes, and one of the major requests from last year is they were like, okay, you know, we want more driving time, etc. And while that was a nice theme, you know, still 40 minutes. These are cars that used to drive 24 hours in Le Mans. So I mean, offering them a chance to drive 40 minutes at one stint, we believe that's a positive change.
So how does that change the weekend for the team, for the driver then? Obviously, the pit stop, you don't miss it because your car wouldn't start last time round.
Yeah, hopefully my heart rate will stay a little bit lower. No, it's from the team side, it's a big advantage, you know, because they're old cars. They take a lot of work to look after, to prepare them to the best standard and to get reliability. In period, they were always challenging, so if you have a bad session, it doesn't destroy your weekend. You know, you've got a second race. If you have a bad first race, if you have an issue in qualifying, you can race your way back up to the front. So it's for the enjoyment for the participants. I think it's a big step forwards. And also you've got more laps where you're racing, where you're going to do it. If you have a long qualifying and you set a really good time early in the session, you're going to sit there for a lot of the session. The spectators aren't going to see the cars on circuit. Whereas this way, you're encouraged to be on track more and do more racing mileage, which is what gets us out and going around. So
I was going to ask exactly that. Qualifying was, I think, an hour long, if I remember, from last year, and there was a lot of dead air in between because there was a lot of waiting and when to go back out again. Do you need 3 sets of tires, or 2 sets of tires, like you've used, or can you do it in half an hour, 1 set of tire, off you go?
Well, we actually did the weekend with 1 set, but
many others didn't, though.
No. It's one of those, the more tyres, the faster you go, it's an advantage, but I'd love to have more sets. But for us, the reason we went on track very much was you were fuel limited, and so it was a bit of a gamble, a bit of a calculation. Okay, how much work do we need to do? How many laps are we going to do in the beginning of the session to make sure we have the setup right? And then you don't want to have too much fuel and too much weight in the car for the end of qualifying when you have the new tyres on. So there's balance of the weight, but also by regulating, making qualifying shorter, you don't have this problem so much. And for the team's point of view, we don't have to think about whether we can be refueling safely in sessions or not, because at that point we were limited by regulation not being allowed to refuel, which meant that we had to control our running. So it's simpler all the way around.
And it's still a lot of effort, as you say, to make these cars fast and reliable. I was impressed, because I've never seen a historic Group C race before, I have to say. I was impressed to see you turn up with tyre ovens and other tyre blankets, and like all the effort that went in there, almost like a proper WEC race.
Well, these are big fast cars. You have, 900 kilograms, you have 600 horsepower, maybe more with some of the other cars on the grid. So as a challenge, we have a mixture of drivers. We have some very fast guys in the front, we have some amateurs in the back, and everyone in between. Starting with hot tyres is just a safety thing, for my opinion. It's so much easier, so much safer. When you go out with cold tyres and you have to bring the temperature, it makes it very easy to make a mistake, whether you've done 2 races or 200 races. Preparing it like that, going with hot tyres, it's just easier and more enjoyable from the driving side. So
you are a very rare example of a young guy who's concentrated on historic racing almost right from the word go. Never attempted a big career in current motorsports, but always concentrated on historic racing. Group C, Formula 1 cars of sorts in the Monaco Grand Prix until James Hunt car and whatever you're driving there. So it's you're doing it all, but all in historic racing.
More or less, it's just been how it's progressed for me. It's been where I've been lucky to get opportunities. You know, this game, it's not cheap, and been lucky to find good guys that I've been able to work with, and it's progressed in that direction. I enjoy the opportunities I get. Like I've driven some Le Mans prototypes in European Le Mans Series, stuff like that. Raced in Blancpain Endurance, as it was now, before it was GT World Challenge, and when those opportunities come, it's great. But I mean, these things are fantastic cars. You have so much power, you have big wide tyres, you can really drive them on the throttle. You don't have any aids to sort of neutralise the experience. So I've been lucky to get some good results and some good opportunities, and I'm very happy where I am.
You were too young to actually experience the heyday of this class when they were doing Le Mans and the World Endurance Championship at that time. And you're still drawn to it. It's still like a myth for you.
Oh, it's fantastic. I mean, the C91, which I was racing here, is the same in August, is the same age as I am. You know, so it's quite cool. At the moment, I think we're aging okay on the scale. It's going to do a lot better than me in the next 5 to 10 years. But at the moment, I think we're sort of aging quite well together. And yeah, okay, I didn't get to live through the experiences of seeing them in the great tracks around the world with a huge grid and it being the modern formula of the time, but I've grown up watching friends, parents in these championships, and I might not remember them originally, but I remember being 6, 8 years old and watching still a grid of maybe 15, 25 cars in Group C and remembering how fast, the noise, hearing the turbo engines, the naturally aspirated cars. So I'm still an enthusiast in the same way as people from generations before mine of these cars. So slightly different glasses, maybe not quite as rose tinted, but still have a good passion for them.
Group C started in 1982 and it then went on into the late 90s. Went through 3 generations of cars, starting with this Group C2 generation and with an old Lancia, and then Porsche came in with a 962 and was then succeeded by carbon fiber cars, etc., etc. And all these cars are eligible to race in the Super Cup, but here you are expanding it on either side of the teller.
Right. Well, I mean, as I mentioned, when we asked the teams and the drivers, do you have any suggestions? What can we do? Some of the teams actually said, okay, we have these, but in the heyday, as you just commented on, there was still a series of cars that led into the Group C, and then when it started moving on, and that's why we said, okay, the concentration is still the Group C, but as the name implies, we want to incorporate the Super Cup part into it. So we have the C3 category, which will expand into cars such as the BMW M1.
Yeah, 82, that is.
Exactly. And then afterwards we have the Ferrari 333. Yeah. So correct, car, the SP, the last one. And so we're looking forward to that. Yeah. As I said, we still want to concentrate because it's the Group C Super Cup, but staying true to the Super Cup name, we want to extend it into the lead-in and the other cars that are following up.
So it's going to be more like a rolling museum around the Group C era.
We could say that, yes.
In an ideal world, we could look forward to, from when I'm coming from my age, we would look forward to the WSC cars, as they were called at the time, World Sports Cars, the open top cars like the Ferrari you mentioned, like the Yost car, the Yost Porsche, which won. These are ones which you still want to have in, but then also the generation after that, the first GT1 generation. Correct.
I believe, correct me, the McLaren F1?
Yeah, and the Porsche 911, I understand.
Right. So, we're having some interesting discussions, and we're looking forward to the next few weeks and filling up the grid.
Now, your car, which you used to good merit last year, was one of these cars which was a World Sports car and then was converted back. Is that correct?
Yeah, I actually have the chassis at home without the roof. So I don't think we have enough time between now and May to get it out, but it'd be quite cool one day. And obviously, it ran with a later configuration of aerodynamics, and it's always interesting to think about.
You tried them both? You tried the Group C version and the WSC version?
No, not yet. I don't know, maybe in the long-term plan, but at the moment we've worked quite a lot to get where we are with the C91, but it wouldn't be a bad idea. It'd be nice to see. Someone of my height, if you take the roof away, it's always easier.
I was just referring to it as a rolling museum, the concept opening up to pre-82 and then post-99, until 99, sorry.
Until then.
Is this a rolling museum, or is this really die-hard motorsport, die-hard racing as in current motorsports?
Last time we were here, we had some very quick drivers in the front. Obviously, Mr. Werner was with the C2 car, was very close, and we had the Jaguar as well with a professional driver, and so it's still racing, But the great thing is, you don't have to be coming to historic motorsport trying to win every race. It's about the passion. When you open the grid up to a bigger age range, you're going to have a car which you could put the fastest driver in the world in the car. As we're in Germany, we could mention maybe Sebastian, someone like this, and they're still not going to win the race. But it's a pleasure to see someone drive a car like that. Say the M1 is, for example, it's never going to be a good competitor for my C91 or say the C11 Mercedes, but to see the M1, the fire coming out the back, really late on the brakes, moving on the traction, it's a nice thing to see. Doesn't matter that it's not on the front row of the grid because it's being beaten by superior cars. And you also get that nice mix where you have faster drivers in slower cars, and then you have battles with maybe lesser experienced guys in faster cars, and it makes for good racing because you get a difference in speed in different corners, different areas. So I think it's a good thing,
so
and it
adds,
yeah, there's a level for everyone. So
just tell us briefly what to expect then come May.
Well, I mean, a very exciting weekend. I mean, it's because it's not just our Group C Supercup, the Bosch Hockenheim Historic. You mentioned the rolling museum. I mean, there's so many classes that are going to be here on that weekend. But as far as our Super Cup goes, we have beautiful Group C cars. Just hearing them come down the straightaway, when the turbo starts whistling, it's always amazing. And we're just looking for a great weekend for drivers and teams and spectators alike.
Michael Lyons, last year's winner of the Super Cup, hopefully back in action this May and in September in Assen, and William Hood, Organizer of the Championship. Thank you very much for joining us. Vielen Dank, dass ihr dabei gewesen seid. Wir sehen uns also Anfang Mai beim Supercup-Rennen hier auf dem Hockenheimring. Bis dahin, tschüss, danke fürs Reinschauen. Euer Norbert Okenga.